Hi, my name is Vivek Krishnamurthy. I am a law professor at the University of Ottawa, and I direct CIPPIC, which is the Samuelson Glushko Canadian Internet Policy and Public Interest Clinic. And CIPPIC does a lot of different kinds of work, basically on ensuring that the law governing technology moves forward in a way that advances the public interest. So that includes work on free expression, copyright, accessibility, um, regulation of new and emerging technologies. And I myself also do a lot of research on the human rights impacts of new technologies, from the internet to AI to quantum computing. So a few different things I think need to change. The first, I'm going to talk about digital equity inside Canada, and then talk a little bit about digital equity internationally. So within Canada, I think one of the things that we've seen with the pandemic especially is that everything is now digital, right? It is impossible to be a citizen and meaningfully participate in democracy or to get services from the government or to be a kid in school, right, without access to digital technology. So with that shift to a digital society, we need to ensure that everyone has access, right, to the technological prerequisites to be a digitally connected citizen in this day and age. So we're talking about access to hardware, access to software, access to internet connections as well, right? So that's one key piece. But at the same time, in a society where everything is digital and online, and there's no longer a meaningful choice about whether to be online, equity means that access has to be on fair conditions. It can't be exploitative, right? So we certainly have a dominant economic model today where people take your data and mine insights about you in exchange for access to internet services. That can't be anymore, right? We need to change that when, again, so much of our lives depend on being online. Those kinds of exploitative terms are even more unfair than they might have been 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, right? So that's sort of a key part of equity. Third, I think, is a digital sphere that's safe and inclusive. And, I think there's a ethos that, of sort of hands off the internet. Let's regulate it the least amount possible. We always want to fear overregulation, but at the same time, if we don't adequately establish ground rules for how people behave in online spaces, you're going to exclude a lot of people, right? And people won't feel comfortable. So that's sort of the third challenge. Now, that's all within Canada. I think a lot of what I said applies internationally, but the kinds of economic disparities that we see within a society like Canada are greatly magnified internationally, right? So if we think about the full range of countries and the full range of economic and social conditions that people live in, and we see this move towards digitization, everything I just said about Canada applies with, even more force internationally. And we have an obligation in countries like ours to help people around the world in being sort of part of an equal and inclusive digital society. So one of the big themes of my work is that if we want to get things right, we can't just hope for them to turn out right, or have a sort of blind faith that technology naturally leads to good things, right? Which is sort of a set of beliefs that I think really existed around the early internet, right? That technology was an inherent good. It would automatically promote rule of law and democracy and greater understanding. We know that's not true, right? Every technology is a double-edged sword. So what I'm hoping is the lesson that we can take from the last 20 to 30 years is the idea that design really matters. It really matters how a technology is built in terms of the impacts it's going to have on people, right? So we need to think carefully about how we design technologies, and we need to be aware of the kinds of impacts that technologies have on different kinds of people and their enjoyment of rights in our society. I think that if we learn some of those lessons and really take them seriously, we might just stick the landing on this in the coming years. I don't really think it's helpful to think about the law being behind the
Okay.
technology. I think there's more of an iterative cycle,
Mm,
right? So we have a set of laws that permit and constrain certain kinds of behavior. And once you have those laws, people act in ways that, go up to the edge of the law. And sometimes that's good because it actually leads to real innovation, right? People think about, oh, well, this is the existing structure of what I can do with copyright. So let me architect my new business in this way that goes to the very edge and, creates a lot of new access, right? Which is great. We want to promote that, right? But it's a cycle. So once the law changes, and we're talking about privacy law reforms in Canada, for example, the Europeans have done it, that changes expectations, in the market of how people believe, and then we see the development of new policies, new business models, et cetera, that respond to the law. So that's sort of one part of the answer. The second thing is that I think the really smart way to regulate here is not with like a hard rule, but rather a flexible standard, and one that's um, meant to evolve over time. So in the cybersecurity field, some of the best rules, like the best regulations that have stood at the test of the time, are the ones that don't say encrypt with 128-bit key. Rather, they say use the best available technology that's reasonable at the time, right? If that's the law, well, it's going to evolve, right? Regardless of whatever happens in terms of technological development. So it's a bit of a shift in our mindset about how we try to regulate. I wanted to say that I think it's remarkable that NCF is here, celebrating a 30th anniversary. Um, I first came online as, a teenager on NCF, and I still have my account all these
awesome.
years later. So I think it's an incredible organization that has had access, internet access, on a free basis, at the heart of its mission since the very beginning. And I really hope that we will see NCF carry on for the next 30 years or more in promoting access, in equitable access, here in Ottawa and beyond, and to serve as that really inspirational model.